This is CBC Vancouver News.
King tides are a problem in a time when we're seeing sea levels generally rise.
Extra high king tides combined with an atmospheric river making a beeline for the south coast. Warnings of a wild week of weather ahead. Plus,
that means higher toxicology for people and more danger.
5 overdose deaths in a week in North Surrey. The warning from police about a tainted toxic drug supply and the advice from advocates. Also,
15% of the businesses are very much struggling that they may not be in business this time next year.
BC's craft beer scene is faltering, from changing drinking habits to soaring costs. We look at what's behind the industry slowdown. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. After an unusually dry November, Environment Canada is warning British Columbians to prepare for heavy rain. A special weather statement is blanketing several regions tonight as an atmospheric river takes direct aim at the south coast. As Janella Hamilton explains, it's a 1-2 punch with many coastal sections already bracing for king tides.
Sandbags line Locarno Beach in Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood, a sign the city is preparing for the king tides that crash ashore this time of year.
King tides are a problem in a time when we're seeing sea levels generally rise.
King tides are the highest tides of the year and are triggered when the sun, moon, and earth align. In past years, they've caused major damage across the south coast, surmounting seawalls, flooding parks, and demolishing piers. With global warming causing sea levels to rise, experts say just a few centimeters difference in the water can prove a tipping point with devastating consequences.
The king tides are astronomical. There's no getting away from them. And sometimes in combination with strong inshore winds, you can get very severe flooding.
And as the high tides roll in, an atmospheric river is set to hit the coast of southern BC on Monday. Environment Canada says the storm will pack wind, heavy rain, and even snow at higher elevations, bringing with it the danger of landslides.
In November 2021, the atmospheric river was really exceptional. So the atmospheric river we're expecting tomorrow is going to be much weaker.
The Vancouver Park Board says it's taking necessary steps to prepare, removing washed-up logs and debris from shorelines, adding sandbags to protect infrastructure and homes, and reinforcing parts of the seawall to brace against damage. Clegg says creating stronger shorelines will be key to prevent future flooding.
You can create offshore kind of natural boulder fields that reduce the impact of incoming waves. It's a kind of a short-term solution, but in West Vancouver, they've done that in a few places.
Environment Canada says the storm surge and heavy rain should start to ease by Tuesday. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Uncertainty, questions, and mystery continue to surround the deaths of a father and his 13-year-old son killed inside their Richmond home. As Yvette Brent tells us, police say they don't yet know the motive.
Detectives fan out from a Richmond home, armed with rakes and metal detectors, combing long grass in a nearby park. Others knock on doors, looking for clues. Why a father and his 13-year-old son were killed in this home.
They both resided within the residence. Although the investigation is very early in its stages, the initial evidence suggests that this was a targeted incident.
Police say they believe someone went to the quiet family house with the intent to kill, but need the public's help to piece together what happened inside between 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. on Thursday. Neither of the victims are known to police.
We're still working to determine the motive, but there does not appear to be a connection to anything like that, any sort of gang connection, anything to that effect.
The neighborhood is rattled, some telling CBC News they were too afraid to go on camera, but say they often saw the man and the boy with his brothers in their yard. The Richmond School District said in an email they're deeply saddened by the loss of a student in the district and will support students and family affected with counselling.
Something like this is certainly shocking. It's not something that happens, thankfully, every day.
Police say it was another family member who made the call to 911. But they're not saying much more as neighbors and schoolmates try to make sense of these violent deaths in this tranquil suburb. Yvette Brent, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, police in Surrey are sending out a warning about a tainted toxic drug supply. It comes after 5 overdose deaths in a week in the Wally neighborhood. As our Janella Hamilton reports, advocates say using alone continues to be one of the biggest risks.
I was using cocaine is laced with fentanyl.
Former drug user Amandeep Johal says he's never knowingly taken fentanyl, but he's overdosed on it 3 times.
Lucky for me, I was surrounded by people.
Johal says he isn't surprised to hear about a new batch of street drugs laced with high-potency fentanyl and benzodiazepine circulating in North Surrey. Advocate Suk Shergill says more drug manufacturers are using less expensive chemicals to cut drugs in order to boost profit.
And they're on an economic model where they want to give the most potent, and they don't want to ship bigger supplies around. So that means higher toxicology for people and more danger.
Shergill says with rising inflation, a housing crunch, and a limited number of treatment centres in BC, people from all socioeconomic backgrounds are using drugs to try and escape the mounting pressures of everyday life.
192 people in Surrey have died this year, and over 50% of those people were in their private residences. Over 80% of people were inside.
Johal says he often hid his drug addiction because of stigma and the fear of bringing shame to his family.
Even I know I'm going through hell, even I know I might die, but I still go for it, because this is how powerful addiction is.
Preliminary data from BC's coroner reveals upwards of 2,000 people have died from illicit toxic drugs in the first 10 months of 2023. Fentanyl and its derivatives are responsible for more than 85% of those deaths. And when you're using alone at home, that risk is even higher.
There is safe injection points, Safe Point, and them. They have supervised consumption. But again, the most important thing is connection. So somebody's watching you and caring for you.
At this point, Fraser Health says it is not seeing an alarming increase in illicit drug deaths in the Surrey area, but that it will issue overdose alerts by text message if there is a sudden spike in toxic drug poisonings.
It's increasing numbers in even the construction industry for the addiction.
Now 3 years sober, Johal says he is grateful to be alive and is now helping others in the South Asian community overcome addiction. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
On Sydney Island, a deer cull is underway, and it involves shooting deer from helicopters. Parks Canada has contracted sharpshooters to target the entire deer population over the next several days on the island. They could not provide details on the number of deer to be killed until the initial phase of the cull wraps up in about 10 days. The cull is intended to reverse the effects of decades of ecological damage caused by the grazing deer, considered an invasive species in the Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. On Vancouver Island, funding for Nanaimo's new operations center is again up in the air, this time due to a clerical error. As Claire Palmer explains, it's expected the city will try again with the approvals process in the new year to get the money secured.
This is Nanaimo's public works yard. The city says it needs about a $48 million upgrade, but some don't like how the process has unfolded.
It should be a referendum.
An alternative approvals process is essentially a way around a referendum. At least 10% of residents must fill out a form opposing a project for it to be stopped. Some residents felt that the process was dishonest.
This whole process has been rather sneaky and devious, I think, too. Again, this because nobody knew about this AAP. Even people in my work with had no idea.
An AAP passed last month, giving the city the green light to borrow the money. However, it was later discovered the city didn't meet the province's requirements for the public notification process.
They must publish at least 7 days before the date of the matter.
Sandy Bartlett is the local lawyer who spotted the clerical error.
But I don't think, given the parameters of how they notify people, I don't think the city's in a position to be able to say they served anyone, right? Let alone everyone.
Bartlett says it's one way to shut people out of what should be a process that engages the public.
I would rather see a referendum voting, which would take into consideration all of the people of Nanaimo, rather than this AAP process, which is going to be decided by those who are reached.
Many residents we spoke with didn't know the process was taking place, but some agreed with the need for improvement on the operations center.
I think it's really stupid. I'm sorry, I just don't like it. They keep, they close the doors, they do this, they do that, and they don't want my opinion.
The city's growing, developing, and I think we have to push ahead to keep up with the times.
This week, council is expected to recommend a second AAP take place in January. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Well, Canada's craft brewery industry is facing a sobering new reality. Many of BC's beer makers are considering closing up shop. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe looks at the reasons why.
In just a few weeks, the fermenters at this Vancouver craft brewery will be emptied for good.
And when we finally close that door on December 31st, it's going to be challenging, I think. It'll be sad.
It's not because the beer sucks. This won Best in Canada. But owner Chris Lay says his new landlord plans to raise the rent to up to $10,000 a month. Combine that with the soaring cost of hops, barley, taxes, and well, pretty much everything, and he can't make a go of it.
When you look at it purely logically, it's a no-brainer. Emotionally, much harder.
The problem for breweries right across the country is that everything you need to make beer is costing more, and people aren't drinking as much beer.
The BC Craft Brewers Guild says warnings about booze consumption are changing behavior, and those who do imbibe are broke.
We just are not seeing the drinkers. People are not coming in as often to the tasting rooms, or they're not purchasing because they just can't afford to do it. They're buying groceries and gas.
That makes it tough to consider raising prices to cover costs.
I think it would be easy to say 15% of the businesses are very much struggling, that they may not be in business this time next year.
Rent may be especially high in Vancouver and other big cities, but breweries in smaller places are at risk too, says the National Association. It wants to see pandemic loans extended and federal taxes reduced.
Really just to stay afloat through 2024 and beyond. Breweries just need a break right now.
Chris Lay is looking for a new place to brew, somewhere more affordable, perhaps shared. His business plan now includes craft non-alcoholic soda, adapting to sobering times. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, still ahead, the situation in Gaza is quickly deteriorating, with hospitals overwhelmed and food supplies running out. We'll take you to the Middle East for the very latest coming up next. Stay with us.
The Ho Ho Hold the Payments event is back at Leon's. Get special prices throughout the showroom. And you can Ho Ho Hold the Payments with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest until 2025. On now for a limited time only. Visit leons.ca for details.
The BC Securities Commission is here to make the investment market work for you by watching over stock markets for firefighters and pianists and falconers, or even firefighting piano-playing falconers. The BCSC, making the investment market work for you.
Ram makes trucks for everyone, like those with holiday spirit and those with not so much. We make trucks for good Samaritans, good neighbors, and even people covered in tree sap. We also make trucks awarded #1 in the vehicle quality by J.D. Power. Whatever your holiday life is like, Ram has a truck for you. Right now, drive home a Ram and get 10% off MSRP for up to $9,700 in total discounts.
There's something wrong with the TV. It's all messed up.
I don't know what that means.
Or what could it mean? It could be over in a couple of hours.
You know something. I'm sure this will turn out to be a big nothing. Stay here till we know more.
How much more do we need to know?
Haven't you been picking up on what's going on out there? No one is in control.
Fortis BC is transforming BC's energy system, harnessing renewable sources like this and that, and even those. We're evolving our energy choices today to benefit everyone tomorrow. Fortis BC, energy for a better BC.
We know it's tough, not knowing what's around the corner. But know this, when whatever it is hits the fan, it isn't as daunting when your money's in a place that has your back. Because together, we're a financial force for change.
Welcome back. Israeli forces dropped bombs across much of Gaza today, including heavy attacks on 2 cities in the south. Civilians are again on the move, seeking safety, but that safety is getting harder and harder to find. The CBC's Katie Simpson has the latest, and a warning, some of these images are disturbing.
Israel's bombing campaign now stretching across more of the Gaza Strip. In the north, children covered in dust and debris desperately search for loved ones. A father and brother, they say, are missing after airstrikes in Jabalia. To the south in Khan Yunis, the hospital is overrun. The scenes inside are again difficult to watch. Primal screams ring through the hallways. Doctors and nurses are so overwhelmed, they seem to stop only for those with a chance to live. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says hundreds of people have been killed since the pause in fighting ended Friday. In these latest strikes, Israel says it killed a Hamas commander who played a senior role in the October 7th attacks. This army spokesman says the IDF continues to extend its ground operation against Hamas centers in all of the Gaza Strip. Civilians are being warned to leave specific areas, including more communities in the south that Israel says it plans to target.
Ultimately, the people of Gaza, the civilian population, are not the targets of our operation. The targets of our operation are the brutal Hamas murderers who butchered our people.
Finding a safe place to go when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are already displaced seems an impossible task for some. Ghassan al-Zanaun and his family are preparing to move for a third time, hoping to find safety in Rafah. Right now, we don't know anyone there, he says. God knows what will happen to us. There is no safe place in Gaza. Israel is being urged publicly by its closest ally, the U.S., to do everything in its power to prevent civilian casualties, while pushing to reopen hostage negotiations and reimpose a pause in fighting.
We haven't stopped our efforts on the National Security Council, and all the way up to the president, trying to work hour by hour to see if we can get this pause reinstated and get those hostages out.
Efforts to restart negotiations, all of it is looking extremely difficult. The Israeli negotiating team left Qatar, where talks had been taking place. Israel and the U.S. are both blaming Hamas for the breakdown, saying Hamas did not meet the terms of the original agreement, while Hamas is pointing the finger back at Israel. A senior Hamas official says any future hostage negotiations must be tied to a permanent ceasefire. Israel has repeatedly rejected calls for a ceasefire, saying its military operation will continue until Hamas is destroyed. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Well, back here in our country, a significant deadline is looming for thousands of small business owners in Canada. They have to repay their federal government pandemic loans by next month, but some say it may actually put them out of business. Alison Northcott explains.
This Montreal business owner recently held a big sale of her locally made clothing. The goal, she told customers in this video, was to pay off the federal government loan she got at the height of the pandemic.
Is it something that's been weighing on you?
Yeah, for whole year.
I was thinking about it, like, what's my plan? What's my plan?
The sale helped raise about half the amount she needs. With the repayment deadline just weeks away, she's trying to figure out the rest.
I was calling my bank, like, to see what could I do and what they can do for me.
Hers is one of 900,000 businesses that took out federal government-backed loans to stay afloat during the pandemic, up to $60,000, $20,000 of which would be forgiven, but only if the other $40,000 is repaid by the January deadline.
At least a third of them say that they don't have the money.
The government did extend the original December 31st deadline, but only to January 18th. Ottawa says businesses in the midst of refinancing can have until the end of March to repay.
And that's when they're going to lose the forgivable portion, and many are saying they may lose their business.
Along with the pandemic, this gym owner says businesses are dealing with inflation and higher interest rates.
We need a little bit more time because everything post-pandemic has changed. I've never dealt with stress like this before in my life. Like, you put everything into your business and then it can be taken away from you.
While many businesses have been able to repay, others are turning to the bank.
They don't necessarily have a solution right now. Try to see with us if we can lend the money. Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no.
Marilyn Barry got a bank loan, but with a 12.7% interest rate.
It's a lot in interest for me, but I didn't have the choice.
She still hopes to find another way to pay the original loan instead. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, today, the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai focused on the health impacts of global warming. And there were more pledges for money and long-term action as well. The CBC's Susan Ormiston has more.
The choking smoke and haze from last summer's forest fires is a red alert that link climate change to health.
The levels of air pollution that you experienced because of those wildfires are some of the most hazardous levels of air pollution that we've seen.
7 million people die a year of polluted air. Record heat and humidity could push that higher. Rates of tropical disease like dengue fever are rising in Bangladesh. 1,000 people have died this year.
The higher temperatures means that the parasites, the infectious agents in the mosquitoes survive longer. It just makes it easier to transmit those diseases.
For the first time at the UN-sponsored climate conference, health took center stage.
Until now, the health response to climate change has been under-recognized, fragmented, and underfunded.
Which country? Health professionals gathered from around the globe to track the impacts, share solutions. 120 countries signed on to a new declaration. Himalaya Mahmood is a bit of a rock star physician. The CEO of Bayer wants her attention. She runs a program called Planetary Health at a Malaysian university.
It's very easy to talk about climate change and not be able to take it at a personal level. How does that impact me? But if you say to them, how does the heat make you feel? As a person working as a fisherman in the coastal area, have you had more incidences of urinary tract infections because you are more heat, more dehydration? So, translating the science into things that people can understand.
Health as the human face of climate change.
Dr. Courtney Howard of Yellowknife is pressing governments.
By making health one of the real focuses of our climate change negotiations, we can help our decision makers see that, you know what, you're not just changing temperatures or changing numbers on a graph. You are saving the lives of your population, and that's probably why you went into decision making in the first place.
You know, this woman has done a lot.
The way ahead means health will be part of future negotiations around climate change. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Dubai.
Here's a live shot of a festive harbor center in downtown Vancouver. And yes, that atmospheric river is making a beeline for the south coast. We'll time out the rainfall warnings with your 5-day forecast coming up next.
The Ho Ho Hold the Payments event is back at Leon's. Get special prices throughout the showroom. And you can Ho Ho Hold the Payments with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest until 2025. On now for a limited time only. Visit leons.ca for details.
Feel infinitely you in the 2023 Infiniti QX50. Visit your local Infiniti retailer or infiniti.ca.
At Best Buy, you can turn the joy of finding the perfect gift into the joy of giving the perfect gift. Get the best tech gifts this holiday at Best Buy. And find gift-giving joy.
Save 50% and get these JBL noise-canceling Bluetooth headphones for only $149.99 at Best Buy.
If you are a First Nations member impacted by a long-term drinking water advisory, March 7th, 2024 matters. It matters because March 7th is when all claims for the First Nations drinking water settlement must be submitted. And it matters because if you and your community were affected, you may be able to submit a claim for compensation. Check your eligibility and submit a claim by March 7, 2024 at firstnationsdrinkingwater.ca.
I look forward to our future, a cleaner tomorrow, where I can make choices I feel good about, like renewable natural gas. It's low carbon, and it comes from landfills, wastewater, and farms. Fortis BC, energy for a better BC.
He's got nothing but the field in front of him. He's at the 30, the 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Touchdown, celebration, celebrate, touchdown, celebration.
And time for a look at the 5-day forecast. Lots to get through. Let's start with the overnight temperatures across the province. And those king tides is part of the big story of what we're talking about here. We're going to see elevated ocean levels. That's a special weather statement from Environment Canada. And that's ahead of the rainfall warning that's coming in with this soaker, the atmospheric river. Here is it hitting across the coast from the north to the south. And it's going to bring up to 70 millimeters of rain come Monday. This is for the Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, parts of Whistler as well. And this is going to mean the risk of flooding and landslides as well, and even snow at those higher elevations. As we see this transpire, we are going to see a snowfall warning as well for the Coquihalla Highway. This is in the higher elevations through the mountain passes, so even another 10 centimeters of snow tomorrow night coming in. And that's not all. We've got a wind warning in effect as well. This is still for the north coast, Haida Gwaii, even parts of the central coast as well. So gusts of up to 120 kilometers an hour. That's what we're going to see overnight into tomorrow and through Monday as well. So a blustery day across BC. It looks like for the most part we will see some amount of precipitation no matter where you are in most parts. Just depends whether it comes down as rain or snow. And then again, that will continue much of the week. It's going to be a wet one through the 5-day forecast. And that is your late news for this Sunday, December 3rd. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. And finally, tonight, here's a look at the latest donation tally for this year's CBC Food Bank Day. The total amount has surpassed $1.6 million. You can still donate online until the end of day on New Year's Eve, December 31st. Head to foodbanksbc.com/CBC Food Bank Day. Thanks for watching this weekend. Good night.